I am my sister's keeper. I am my brother's keeper. I am connected to a community of people. God built us for that. When somebody reaches over and says, how you doing? It's okay to say, I'm not good. And not glaze over it and say, no, everything's great.
Yeah.
When you're not.
Right. Hello and welcome back, or for the first time, to the Anything But Quiet Time podcast, a weekly conversation about God, about Scripture, about what we're going through in our quiet times and our lives. Rachelle and Carder, and
yes.
If you're listening, you could also watch on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you could listen if that's easier for you. We'll send you both links and text the word quiet to the number 893-893.
I find it easier to listen to me than watch me.
I think we've all been there.
Oh.
We all are there sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So there is this book in the Old Testament. It's Ecclesiastes. It is attributed to King Solomon as having written it.
King David's son.
David's son. And there's a passage about there is a season, a time for everything. It's very quotable. And it's just one of these, it's one of these books. We're not going to get into the poetry part of the book, but just, I want to reference the time for everything, the season for everything, because at the very beginning of it, I mean, basically it's like everything is meaningless.
Yes, it's very distraught in many places, isn't
Meaningless,
it?
meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Don't know if you got it.
I think I heard it. Yeah.
Everything is
Was there an Oxford comma in there too?
What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Basically, through this book, we see that it rains on the just and the unjust. There are people who benefit from the proverbs that Solomon has shared in his wisdom, and then there are going to be exceptions to that rule. Mm-hmm. Good things happen to good people and bad people.
Yep. Yep.
But also bad things happen to good people and bad people.
Yeah.
And Solomon at the very end of the book, I think, wraps it up with, but it's still really important to be vigilant and disciplined in your faith and in following after the Lord. Because I think that's where it rests. And I think we're so blessed that we know the person of Jesus Christ post even the disciples writing the Gospels and the letters, just knowing the Messiah and that he completed it all. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about it, if the people had received what they thought they were going to get in a Messiah,
a military leader, a political leader,
he would have established peace. During Solomon's reign, it was pretty peaceful. Mm. Mm-hmm. It was it was easy going, easy peasy. He was kind of living off the fruits of his dad's labor.
Yeah.
And he was incredibly wealthy.
Was he the first trust fund kid?
Yeah, he was the first Nepo baby. Is that what it's called?
Is that what it is?
He was that guy, though, that whatever he touched, it was almost like the Midas touch. It turned to gold, and he was the one who contemplated the deepest, at least wrote it down about what is the meaning of all of this. So if there was ever a level to attain in this life, Solomon seemingly got there, and yet he was very discontent.
Yeah. I was going to say unsatisfied. That's exactly, you read these thoughts in Ecclesiastes, and it's been a while since I've gone through it.
Yeah, me too.
Just remembering that, I think he's saying from experience. Mm-hmm. He's lived both the good and the bad. At least I'm sure seen some bad things and gone through some hard times, and yet it's still never satisfied.
So let's look at what Jesus could have brought if he met the standard thinking of a Jewish person waiting for Messiah to come, and certainly being delivered out of the hands of people who were not their favorite people. And there were some empires that were worse than others. The Romans, even though they were just horrible and treated the Jewish people like dogs, they did also allow them to assemble and keep their God and, do their thing as long as you're within our boundaries here.
Yeah. They were kind of inclusive of gods.
Yeah.
But you just had to still pay the taxes and follow the rules.
Still had to pay the taxes. So they were still impoverished and yeah. Is it repressed the right word? I'm seeking for words here that are
oppressed,
not flowing.
Certainly,
oppressed. Thank you. So if he had met those standards, I think even through just Solomon's wanderings and wonderings, we would see that we would still be not satisfied. But Jesus came and he fulfilled the Old Testament, the law, the things that we could never accomplish on our own. He did that for us. And he helped us understand what true satisfaction is. And it's not in the worldly things around us. It's not even peace as the world gives us. He says, I give it to you as nobody else gives. My peace it's shared as this indescribable peace that it surpasses understanding. It's something that you truly feel even in the middle of, there's this wonderful image in World War Z.
Wow. Not where I thought the profound thought. This is the zombie movie, right?
It's a zombie movie with Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
There is this little guy in the movie, and it's a clue. Spoiler alert. There's this little guy. He clearly is not well and is dealing with maybe cancer because his hair is gone. So maybe he's been going through treatments or whatever. And all the crowd is rushing to get away from the zombies. And he sits down quietly in the middle of all of it. And he doesn't really know what's going on around him. But for some reason, the zombies leave him alone. And, well, I don't want to give it away in case you haven't seen the movie. But if ever there was an image of somebody who could be at peace in the middle of battle, in the middle of strife, there's this image of that little boy, and he's at peace. And I only Jesus can do that. Mm-hmm. And I don't care how many conquests you have military-wise, there's always going to be another kingdom, always going to be another suppressor, another dictator. But I think they were depending on one who would just squash all of the war and make it so that it was at peace all the time. I'm sure that's what they were thinking. I don't know. It's hard to kind of get inside of the mindset because now we know who Jesus is, and now we realize that no matter what happens this side of heaven, I can step into that place just like that little boy where all this stuff, even though I'm still in it, it's all around me. I can step into the presence of God in that moment and have perfect peace, even in the face of death, even in the face of illness. And it's important for me to be thinking about that because we try to go over what we're going over in our quiet time. And we're about to do a prayer event here where our kids are going back to school, my son going to college for the first time. And it seems to be this season of life that keeps popping back up into my thoughts. Because, I mean, how do you go from, when we started our radio show, my children were so small. When I moved to where we live now, they were barely, in fact, I don't even think they were quite 8 and 5. I think they were 4 and 7. And I think about that. And now you have a little guy who's 4 and how quickly everybody said it would go. And now, yes, it seemingly has, even though there were plenty of nights at the homework table and plenty of nights making sure they got to soccer practice and plenty of nights, in between.
Sure.
You find yourself in this new season. There's a time for everything, Solomon wrote. And if there is a time for everything and a purpose under heaven for every time, then God has a purpose for me in every season. And as I was even going through some of my old photos, I was kind of lamenting over, look at how little they were. But you've heard the phrase, even from people like Mercy Me, the band, if I could go back in time and talk to myself, my younger self, dear younger me is the song. I don't know that I would be able to go back and tell myself anything of value because everybody who loved me tried to give me these helpful hints along the way. This is what you should be doing with your children at this age of life. Don't forget to treasure these moments. You want to do all of that stuff, but you have to have your own journey. No matter how many times I tell my kids, do this. Don't make my mistakes. They have to make their own mistakes in order for them to grow and become the people that they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for every season of life, I think God gives us that space for that time so we can even make good choices and bad choices to become the people we later will be. And we're not going to be able to foresee anything up ahead. When that friend told me one day, just like me, you're going to have an empty nest. And I wanted to empathize with her, but I could not because my children were still very young and that thought is so light years ahead of me.
And I'm exhausted.
I haven't slept at all. It's like when people are telling you, it started back before you were pregnant. You got married when you're having babies. Don't forget to treasure the moments while you don't have babies. And then work gets in the way or what have you. And then you're pregnant and you can't wait to get this child out of you because you're out here looking like the Titanic and nothing fits anymore. Well, just enjoy the rest that you get now because you're not going to have the rest.
Yeah.
We're always helping one another with this stuff. Well, just enjoy your children now because one day they won't be there. But I think we can enjoy every season is the point I'm trying to get to. And I think we need to stop maybe lamenting as much as we do. I think we need to grieve the loss of that moment, I think that's a healthy thing to do. Yeah, I miss it when they were small. But you know what? If they hadn't gotten to the next stage, I would never be able to miss that next stage or know about it, rather. And then I wouldn't be able to know about this stage of life, or I wouldn't be able to one day know about grandchildren. And I think it's really important for us to do, I think, what God does in our faith walk. If he always kept us at baby stage Christians, we would never grow and process who he wants us to be as Christ followers. We would just be the people that said, yes, I said yes to Jesus and I got a sticker. And then I don't change. I want my children to grow in Christ. I want them to grow up. And in order for them to do that, they can't stay in this form, and neither can I.
Yeah, that's true. And I've been encouraged by the people, just from a simple life stage advice, you met people just maybe wired a little differently, and they say, I hated the little years. I hated it. And when they became 7, 8, 9, and we could do stuff together and connect and bond and understand each other more, that's what I really enjoyed. And it's been a fun ride ever since. And so understanding there are amazing things to look forward to, and that there are things. We're going to a theme park soon, and it's gonna be fun. I can't wait. But he's 4 years old. He can't ride the rides that are gonna be really fun for both of us. And that's one of my memories growing up of when I got old enough, and me and my dad were riding the big roller coasters together. And I'm excited to do that with him. You know? So there's always things to look forward to, and I think how we talked about this the other day, just encouraging the growth. In both just take the spiritual part out of it, but obviously that very much included too the growth of just life lessons and the growth in stature and in health, but then also as they hopefully become more in line with Jesus and know who he is better and mature in that way too.
It's important for me to celebrate the growth and not just look back on the fun pictures. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of. And now I'm speaking as a mom who has firstborn special needs, a very special situation there. This child sees things in black and white, and praise the Lord, he has been seeing what God instructs as the obvious choices. This is right, and I'm walking in this. And we even, as a child, we would joke about him being the rule police because he would monitor. Well, that's not what the Bible says this, or whatever. And he'd monitor that with others. And not to say that he's perfect by any stretch, but it seems that my second born as well, he's seeking the Lord, and I'm very grateful for that. That's not been every parent's situation. In fact, my older brother, my parents experienced that with my older brother, who I think at some point in his youth said yes to the Lord. But there was struggle there for so long. And it wasn't until years later after his divorce that he was all in. There was a lot of years of praying on their knees for my older brother, who now is he just loves Jesus. And when I go over to his house at Christmas time, he'll sneak away early in the morning into his little man cave area. And I know he's in there reading his Bible. I know he's in there giving it that time to the Lord, which is that's exciting, I think, to hear if you're still praying for that child to come home, that prodigal son to come home or daughter. But with the seasons changing and wanting to celebrate, there was something I think a Christian artist, Rich Mullins, said really well once.
Our God is an awesome God.
Well, he sang that.
Well, okay, that's true.
And I love when he was asked, where was your inspiration for that song? And he goes, God? He was kind of like that, rough around the edges. But Rich said something along the lines of, when we lose our children, maybe to them passing away, there have been parents obviously disrupted, their life dreams for them disrupted. Mm-hmm. How could God take them away from life? 18 years, that's it? Mm. And I have a child that's about to be 18 years old, and I cannot fathom what that would be like. But Rich was encouraging the flip-flop of the perspective, to be praising God that we had the time that we did.
Sure.
And so even applying that to, gosh, I don't mean to be morbid, but like the death of the toddler years and the death of the elementary school years.
Yeah.
God, I'm grateful for those years. But now I'm going to look forward to what you have for them. Just like the real passing of a person, we're grateful for the time we had with them. We are believing that they are in a way better place.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. And we can celebrate that. I can also celebrate every stage of life and also look at it like, am I growing too? And hopefully I am, because I know there are things that I wish I could kind of go back and do over as a parent or as a person, with having nothing to do with parenting, But at the same time, it's grown me to the person that I am today.
Yeah.
And would I want to stay back in those years?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that. Would I really go back if given the chance? You
Right.
know? And I think that sometimes that might be yes, if you're thinking back to a vacation, or if maybe when kids leave your home, it's like, no, I'd go back to their freshman year of high school or whatever, when it was so much fun, But generally, no, because I'm enjoying now, hopefully.
I found a list of things, and sometimes BuzzFeed is like a buzzkill, and it kind of was. They had this list together of things that other adults are sharing the hardest truths about aging and what they've had to come to terms with. It's incredibly honest. And this one person just shared, all of them very, very raw. I'm not saying this because I'm vain, but it's difficult to lose your looks, going from young and vibrant to old and haggard, and visually you can see you're getting older. I was sitting on my bed, crisscross applesauce, my legs. I was working on sewing on something, and I sat there for a while. This project was taking forever. So maybe a couple of hours. If you sit crisscross applesauce for any length of time and you are well over the age of 40, I did not expect it to impact my joints the way it did. I was like, it was like
I'm surprised you're here walking today, right?
To get out of my bed. So it's not even just looks; it's just everything creaks, right? Getting frustrated with everyday technology. Some days I just want to throw up my hands up in the air because nothing works right. And some things seem so overly complicated. And this person says, and I'm in IT, which doesn't help. And it makes me feel old and outdated.
Yeah.
And I know that our parents feel that way. And to some degree, my son yesterday goes, Mom, give me your phone. Give me your phone, because he knew how to do something we needed to have done in order to watch a movie on TV, and it had to do with my phone. And I released the control over to him, and that's where it's going to be. And for my grandchildren, they're going to be doing that to him. It's going to be crazy. Empty nesting. I know my kids have grown and have their own lives now, but I miss them living with us as a family on a daily basis so much. Then there's the physical pain, vision, letters are too small.
Well, let me step in here, because I think that this is I wanted
to get to a positive point.
Okay.
So as I was reading through this and getting sadder, like, oh my word, your circle of friends gradually grows smaller because they start to spend time elsewhere. Their kids are involved over here and not where they were with you before, and so now you're not seeing them as much, and that group of friends is changing. But instead of looking at this as something that's been taken away, there's another opportunity around the door. If we allow the Holy Spirit to continue to drop those opportunities into our vision line, and I can see, oh, it's not over. My life is not over because I creak.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not. And if I'm also, yes, my arms feel empty. I'm sure on days when my children are not around me, I'm going to feel that even more. But I also know that my focus has never been to put my identity into being a mother. It is to be, my identity is in Christ. And if I'm keeping him the main focus, then I'm not laying the guilt trip on them about, oh, I remember when you were younger.
Right.
And I'm not celebrating the stage of life, because it's like, well, dang, Mom, I didn't know I was, breaking your world apart, which, I think we can do that.
Yeah.
But
well, and I'll say this just happened today. My son would, he's 4, and he would, when my wife would drop him off to grandma's, he would cry and don't go. And then lately he's been fine, but can I have a hug and a kiss? Today he goes, bye, Mom. I don't want a hug or a kiss.
We talked about your baby and his monster beep beeps. He loves the monster trucks.
Yeah.
And there will be a time when you go through that aisle at Target or wherever, and he doesn't get super excited about Hot Wheels.
And I'm sitting here going, isn't this cool? And he's going.
That happens in my life all the time now.
Yeah.
So I remember we scoured Disney for a porg. Like there was a magnet porg for a shoulder thing. I don't know.
And that's a bird in Star Wars.
It's a bird in Star Wars. And it was my son's thing. Like he loved porgs. For 1 year during those fall festivals, you can dress up and stuff. He was a porg. A huge porg. I made him this costume. So we scoured looking for this porg. And I don't know why I didn't think of this. I bought it on eBay when I got home. Found it like that.
Yeah, nice.
That was ridiculous. But I showed him a T-shirt. He's grown out of all the sizes, going into his sophomore year of high school, and there's a perfectly tasteful kind of like maybe, I've seen boys with Hello Kitty on their shirt. So I'm like, this is kind of cool, and it's a porg, but it's not like super cutesy porg. It's a porg. Look at that. And he goes,
You like these. You like them.
But you like them. And your son... I will remember that with your child and maybe not push the monster trucks on him all the time because it might change. But
well, I just wanted to step out and go, I just think this is fascinating. And this is going to be kind of random at first, but the existence of God, does God exist? And there's all sorts of arguments for it and against it. And a lot of people go towards science. I find that what's more interesting is to go through history and texts and what we have answers for and manuscripts. I think the most one that I'm interested in, and I think is so people that don't believe in God can't really get past this one, in my opinion. Morals. Mm-hmm. How do morals exist if there's no God, right? You can't tell me that if we're here by chance that anything is wrong.
Yeah.
And yet somebody eventually, if I start naming horrific things, murder and you name it, people will eventually tell me, well, that's wrong. Well, why?
Maybe they think that we've evolved from that place of
still doesn't provide a reason.
Carnivorous alpha.
Right. But there's nothing wrong with it.
But
I think this is interesting. And this isn't anything big or, analytical, but why do we have these feelings about old stages being gone and kids growing up?
Yeah.
I think we've seen in nature, you've seen mothers cry over their babies if they're, killed, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't ever seem like there's anything in just nature that like, oh, this calf, he's gotten too big now. Like there's something here of we are in a broken world that time has been placed on instead of the eternal walk with God, as I think was going to be set up with Adam and Eve. And it was just, and if there was going to be kids, at least it was just going to be perfect, whatever it was going to be.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of see this, time goes by and we age and our kids grow up. And to me, that just screams there is a creator, and yet we're in a broken world because of sin.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just don't think these feelings would be natural.
And because we're in a broken world, we can't dismiss the feelings that we feel and just cover it up and act like it didn't happen. oh, I'm fine, everything's fine. Because no. Everything around us isn't fine.
Right.
There's brokenness around us. It's not fine. But how does the Bible tell me to deal with it? And so to be anxious over nothing.
Yeah.
To pray about everything. And when I do that, I'm releasing any semblance of control that I thought I had at one point and leaving it there at the feet of Christ. And then essentially I'm stepping in with my own feet to that place of peace that passes understanding. I'm realizing it for myself. And it in every given moment of the day might need to do that multiple times a day. And there was something else that I feel like I was thinking about this morning on the way to work. You mentioned Adam and Eve. There is something that Cain says, and I feel like the question that God places out there, Jesus asked so many questions. When people asked him questions, he did the thing, which probably drives interviewers crazy, where he'll ask a question back. Mm-hmm. And so Cain has killed Abel, and God says, where is your brother? And then Cain says,
am I my brother's keeper?
He never gets an answer from God, except I think we did. Yes. We're to care for one another.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that people who have gone before me in this season of life, like even last night, one of our friends in HR, which it's okay, she reached out for a good reason.
Okay. So
HR is fine.
You're not in trouble?
No.
Okay.
Not this time.
All right.
No, but,
hey, can I say real quick?
Yeah.
Later today, a couple of us are going to deliver lunch to police officers at a police station.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I was like, hey, I got to be at the police station tomorrow. They're just going to question me for a few minutes. It's not a big deal. And then I just walked off.
She knows you so well, though.
I know,
she probably just rolled her eyes and kept reading or whatever it was.
So anyway, HR.
No, but I reached out to HR and she reached out. Had nothing to do with why I reached out to her. Asks, Sammy's about to go to school, isn't he? Yeah, he is. How you doing? There's an example of a way that I am my sister's keeper. I am my brother's keeper. I am connected to a community of people. God built us for that. Yeah. And even though the fall took place and there's brokenness around us, and no, we can't glue it back together. Only God can do that, and one day he will.
Yeah.
Right? He can glue this person back together, and did through his Spirit. And he's trying to glue us all together piece by piece, right? If we let him. When somebody reaches over and says, how you doing? It's okay to say, I'm not good. And not glaze over it and say, no, everything's great.
Yeah.
When you're not.
Right.
And I was honest, moment by moment. And she just wanted to let me know, I'm praying for you. It's going to be okay.
What a great way to do it, because I think we've both kind of the same way in this. If somebody just literally on the street at church.
Yeah, how you doing?
How you doing? I'm not going to say, not good.
Right.
But she opened it. Mm-hmm. Hey, I know this about you. Mm-hmm. How are you doing? It was an honest question. It wasn't a greeting. It was an actual question. And I think that's insightful on how to also approach other people. Yeah. Caring truly and being their keeper.
And I need to take a page out of her book and do that even with you. Like, how are you? I know Ezra's 4. He said, I don't need a hug and a kiss from mommy. That's the beginning of what Rachelle just talked about, Yeah. But if I've been there, or I know that have been there, even if I haven't, I have a friend right now I'm communicating with. Her sister is being taken off of the machines today, and she's going to pass on and be with Jesus. I don't have a sister, number one. My sibling is still very much alive, number two. I can't empathize. What business do I have reaching out? God's business. I am my brother's keeper. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I am. Through his Spirit, we can do that for one another.
We were at small group last night, and there was 4 of us just, we split up into guys and girls, a married couple small group. And so the 4 of us were just talking about how crazy life is, and, people dealing with job stuff and pressure and new management role, and, one guy looking for a different job, and nobody really had any advice. I mean, especially if you don't really want it, or if people, especially if they're not in the same industry as you. Well, have you tried this? Yeah, it's not really how it works. You don't get it. But I think it was just so good to just vent in that proper way and bear one another's burdens and just listen and have a place. Because I think it's like you feel the pressure and anxiety when you really feel like it's all on your shoulders and you don't even get to talk about it with anybody. And so I think that's good encouragement for a small group like that.
When you said vent in the proper way, I think you've even helped me in that. It's like, okay, what's the, if you're going to talk to me about this problem that's come up, what is the objective? What is something that we can, what is the takeaway right now? Yeah,
and I think with a group of small group guys, it's like, I think one is relating of marriage or jobs or whatever, but we don't get on there and go, my wife said.
Right.
We're not doing that.
Right.
But we are saying, it's hard when you're on a trip with your in-laws, and I wasn't patient, and that was one of the examples, and so it's just understanding that we want to relate and be honest, but we don't want to just complain.
Right.
There's somewhere in between there that is healthy to relate to one another, but also acknowledge that I don't have everything figured out, and it's not like I want to come in here and talk about my wife or my in-laws or my job or my boss or whatever. But just understand that I also don't want to let it build inside. And I think that's where you can really bear one another's burdens. Even if we don't have advice, even if we can't do anything, I can't get my friend a new job, for example,
it was a time that you had kind of set apart to be able to do that, to love one another and speak into, and we were talking about something that happened with my husband the other day, and his job is it's a demanding job. He's a nurse and he's over several other nurses, groupings of nurses. And something happened with a patient. And the family member was very distressed. And understandably, when your family member is hurting, you bear that, and sometimes we don't do it in the right way. And that this man was not doing that. And here I was trying to encourage my husband, but at the same time, I saw why that man might have been reacting the way he was reacting. And I don't know if it was the time or the place to be trying to, I don't know, give that guy the benefit of the doubt, Sammy. Maybe he didn't mean it that way. When in that moment, he maybe just needed me to just listen.
Sure.
And to support. So obviously there's ways that we can really bear each other's burdens. Then there are times where it's iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, that's true.
And reading the room is really key to that.
Or you could take my wife's advice.
What's that?
Or wife's stance. Anytime I come home with something, hey, this guy in traffic, you're not going to believe what this guy did. and she goes, can't stand him. I was, you don't actually know him. Can't stand him. He did that? Can't stand him. Thank you. She always has my back.
All
she always has my back. Yeah.
Unless, of course, it has to do with something that may be related to her. And then she's like, no, I'm going to have to go with me on this one.
Can't stand you.